The DNA test that destroyed my family started as a joke. At least, that's what we thought. It was supposed to be something fun, something harmless. None of us imagined that one envelope would break 4 lives at the same time. My name is Daniel Harper. I'm 42 years old. I live in Columbus, Ohio, with my wife, Megan, and our 17-year-old son, Tyler. From the outside, our life looked normal. Actually, better than normal. Megan and I had been married for 20 years. We met in high school, started dating when we were both 18. By the time we were 22, Tyler was born. People used to say we were one of those couples that made it, the kind that survives everything. We built our life slowly. First apartment, first used car, first mortgage. Megan worked as a dental hygienist. I managed a hardware store. We weren't rich, but we were stable, comfortable, the kind of middle-class life that most Americans hope for. Backyard barbecues, little league games, family vacations to Florida. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. Tyler was the center of it all, our only child, tall for his age, quiet, a little sarcastic sometimes, but a good kid, the kind teachers like, the kind parents brag about. He loved basketball and video games, and like most 17-year-olds, he rolled his eyes whenever Megan asked too many questions. But he was still close to us, especially to me. We spent hours watching games together, talking about college, talking about the future. Everything felt solid, unbreakable, until the Christmas of last year. That was when Megan's sister, Laura, brought the gift. If you've ever been to a big American family Christmas, you know how chaotic it gets. Kids running around, too much food, football on the TV, half the family arguing about politics, that kind of thing. Laura arrived late, like she always did. She burst through the door carrying a big bag and laughing. "I brought something fun this year." Laura had always been the adventurous one in Megan's family. Divorced twice, lived in 3 different states, always trying new things. So when she pulled out 5 small boxes and dropped them on the table, we were curious. "What is it?" Megan asked. Laura grinned. "DNA kits." Everyone laughed. "You're kidding," Megan said. "Nope," Laura replied. "Everyone's doing these now. You send in your saliva and they tell you where your ancestors came from." She handed 1 box to each of us. Me, Megan, Tyler, and even Megan's parents. Her dad chuckled. "Well, I already know where I'm from, Ohio." Laura rolled her eyes. "Come on, Dad. It's fun." Tyler picked up the box and read the label. Ancestry DNA. He shrugged. "Cool." At the time, it felt harmless. Just a silly thing to try. A conversation piece. Something we'd probably forget about after a week. 2 weeks later, we mailed the kits. Life went back to normal. Work. School. Bills. Nothing unusual. Then the results came back. And that's when everything started to unravel. It happened on a Tuesday night. I remember because Megan was making tacos. Tyler was upstairs doing homework. And my phone buzzed with an email. "Your DNA results are ready." I opened it casually, curious more than anything. The website loaded. Charts. Percentages. Family matches. Honestly, most of it didn't make much sense. Irish. German. A little Scandinavian. Pretty much what I expected. Then I noticed something strange. Under DNA matches, 1 name appeared at the top. Tyler Harper. Relationship. Close family. Of course. That made sense. I clicked on the profile, just out of curiosity, and then I saw the number. Shared DNA, 0%. I stared at the screen. That couldn't be right. 0? That had to be some kind of glitch. Parents share 50% DNA with their children. Everyone knows that. I refreshed the page. Same result. 0%. I felt a strange chill run down my back. Maybe the system made a mistake. Maybe the test hadn't processed correctly. I clicked through the other matches. Megan appeared. Her DNA match with Tyler? 50%. Exactly what it should be. But mine, still 0%. For a long moment, I just sat there, listening to Megan cooking in the kitchen. listening to Tyler moving around upstairs. Everything sounded normal, but suddenly the house felt different, like the ground beneath it had shifted. I walked into the kitchen slowly. "Megan?" She looked up from the stove. "Yeah? You got your DNA results yet?" She nodded. "Yeah, earlier today. Mostly Irish, apparently." She smiled. "Why?" I hesitated. Then I tried to sound casual. "Did you check Tyler's match?" "Yeah," she said. "It's cool. It shows the family tree stuff." Then she added something that made my stomach tighten. "It says he's exactly half my DNA." I forced a small smile. "Yeah, that's normal." She looked at me curiously. "Why are you asking?" I swallowed. "Just wondering." I didn't tell her. Not yet, because in that moment I convinced myself of something simple. The test had to be wrong. That was the only explanation. Tyler was my son. I had been there the day he was born, held him in my arms, watched him grow up. You don't raise a child for 17 years and suddenly discover he's not yours. That's not how life works. But later that night, I couldn't sleep. So around midnight, I went downstairs, opened my laptop, and checked the results again. Just to be sure. Just to prove my fear was ridiculous. But the number hadn't changed. 0%. No shared DNA. No biological connection. And that was the moment I realized something terrifying. The DNA test hadn't destroyed my family yet, but it was about to. Because if Tyler wasn't my son, then someone had been lying for 17 years. I told myself I wouldn't jump to conclusions. There had to be a logical explanation. DNA databases make mistakes sometimes. Samples get mixed up. Data gets misread. At least, that's what I told myself at 2 a.m. while staring at my laptop. But no matter how many times I refreshed the page, the result stayed the same. 0% shared DNA, which meant one thing. Tyler was not my biological son. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I had barely slept. Megan was already in the kitchen making coffee. Tyler was scrolling through his phone at the breakfast table. Everything looked normal. Too normal. For a moment I wondered if I should just keep the secret to myself. Pretend I never saw the result. But the thought wouldn't leave my head. So I tried something simple. "Megan," I said casually. "Yeah?" she replied. "You remember when Tyler was born?" She looked up from her coffee. "Of course I remember. Why?" "Just thinking about something," I said. Then I asked the question that had been bothering me all night. "Do you remember if anything unusual happened at the hospital?" She frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. Mix-ups, babies getting switched or something." Megan stared at me for a moment. Then she laughed. "A hospital switch? Daniel, this isn't a soap opera." Tyler rolled his eyes. "Please don't tell me you're watching those crime documentaries again." I forced a small smile. Just curious. But Megan's reaction stayed with me. Because for a split second, before she laughed, she looked nervous. That afternoon, I decided to test the hospital theory. Tyler had been born at St. Andrews Medical Center downtown. 17 years ago. I remembered the place clearly. The long hallway. The tiny hospital bracelet around Tyler's wrist. The nurse who joked that he had my nose. At least, that's what I remembered. But memories can be wrong. So during my lunch break, I drove downtown. The hospital looked smaller than I remembered. Hospitals always do when you come back years later. The receptionist at the records desk listened patiently as I explained. "I'm trying to request birth records from 2006. She nodded. "Do you have the patient's name?" "Tyler Harper." She typed for a moment. "Birth date?" I gave it to her. Then she looked up. "Are you the father?" I hesitated. "Yes." She handed me a form. "You can request the records here, but it might take a few days." "Was there ever any incident involving newborns that year?" She raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "Babies getting switched accidentally." She shook her head. "Not that I know of. That's extremely rare." Then she added politely, "But you can ask the maternity department if you're concerned." I left the hospital with more questions than answers. Because if there had been no hospital mix-up, then the only other explanation was one I wasn't ready to face. That evening when I got home, Megan was acting different. Subtle. but different. She kept glancing at me, like she was trying to read my face. During dinner, she asked casually, "So, did you look more at the DNA results?" My fork paused halfway to my mouth. "Yeah. What did yours say?" I shrugged. "Mostly European stuff." She nodded slowly. "And Tyler?" I looked at her carefully. "You already saw his." "Yes," she said. Then she added something strange. "Did the results match what you expected?" The question felt loaded. Too careful. I forced a neutral tone. "Why wouldn't they?" She shrugged. "I don't know. Sometimes those tests are weird." Then she changed the subject. But the damage was done. Because now I was sure of one thing. Megan knew something. Later that night, Tyler knocked on my office door. "Dad?" "Yeah?" He leaned against the doorframe. "Something weird going on with you and Mom?" I looked up. "What do you mean?" "You guys are acting strange. Teenagers notice more than adults think. I think you're imagining things." He shrugged. "Maybe." Then he hesitated. "I checked my DNA results again today." My heart skipped. "Oh yeah?" "Yeah." He sat down in the chair across from me. "There's something odd, though." My stomach tightened. "What?" He turned his phone toward me. "There's supposed to be a match with you, right?" For a second, I couldn't breathe. "Why do you ask?" "Because it doesn't show one." The room felt suddenly smaller. Tyler frowned. "It says Mom is a match, but you're not." He looked genuinely confused. "Is that normal?" This was the moment I had been dreading. The moment when the secret stopped being mine alone. I took a slow breath. Those tests can be wrong sometimes. Tyler didn't look convinced. "But it says 0% shared DNA." He looked directly at me. "Dad, what does that mean?" I didn't answer. Because I didn't know what the truth was yet. And once you say something like that out loud, you can't take it back. Before I could respond, Megan appeared in the hallway. "Tyler, can you help me bring in groceries?" Tyler stood up. "Sure." He looked back at me once more. But this time, his expression had changed. The confusion was gone, replaced by something else. Suspicion. After Tyler left the room, Megan stepped inside and closed the door. Her voice was quiet. "What did he ask you?" So she knew. Or at least suspected. He saw the DNA results. Megan froze. For a moment, she didn't move. Didn't breathe. Then she sat down slowly in the chair Tyler had just left. Her hands were shaking. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. She wasn't surprised by the result. She was afraid of it. "Megan," I said slowly, "is there something you want to tell me?" She shook her head immediately. "No." "Then explain the DNA test." Her eyes filled with tears. "I can't." The words hit me harder than I expected. "You can't, or you won't." She covered her face. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then finally, she whispered something I never expected to hear. 17 years ago. Her voice trembled. "There was a night you don't remember." My stomach dropped. "What night?" She looked up at me, terrified. "The night before Tyler was conceived." The room went silent. Because suddenly, this wasn't about a hospital mix-up anymore. And whatever happened that night had been buried for 17 years, until a simple DNA test dug it back up. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Megan's words hung in the air like smoke. The night before Tyler was conceived. I stared at her, trying to understand what she meant. "What about that night?" She looked down at her hands. "You don't remember it." A cold feeling crept into my chest. "What do you mean I don't remember?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Because you were drunk." I leaned back in the chair. The memory came back slowly. 17 years ago, a college friend of mine had gotten married. Big reception. Open bar. Too much whiskey. I remembered laughing with friends. Dancing with Megan. Then, nothing. Just a blank space. The kind that happens when alcohol erases the rest of the night. "I thought you just passed out," Megan said quietly. "You did, in the car. So how does that explain the DNA test?" She hesitated, then said something that made my stomach twist. "Because you didn't pass out until after the fight." "What fight?" She closed her eyes. "The fight you had with my brother." Now I really was confused. Megan's older brother, Chris, had always been difficult. Hot-tempered, protective. But we got along most of the time. What does Chris have to do with this? She looked up at me. Everything in her face told me I wasn't going to like the answer. That night, you two argued. About what? You accused him of flirting with me. The room felt strangely quiet. That doesn't sound like me. It wasn't, Megan said quickly. You were drunk. Everyone was upset. What happened? She swallowed. You punched him. I blinked. I hit Chris? Yes. And then? Her voice trembled slightly. He hit you back. I felt the pieces shifting in my head. How hard? Megan looked at the floor. Hard enough that you collapsed. A strange pressure built behind my eyes. You mean, he knocked me out? She nodded slowly. Yes. Why didn't anyone tell me that? Because the doctor said it was probably just a concussion. What doctor? Megan took a shaky breath. The one we took you to that night. The room spun slightly. You took me to the hospital? She nodded. Yes. But you said I passed out in the car. I lied. The word landed heavily. Why? Because Chris was terrified. Of what? That he had seriously hurt you. Now my head was pounding. Okay, I said slowly. You took me to the hospital after the fight. Yes. And then what? Megan wiped her eyes. Then the doctor said you needed observation overnight. And you stayed with me? She nodded. Yes. Then what does that have to do with Tyler? Megan took a long time to answer. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded fragile, because something happened that night. What? She looked at me like she was about to step off a cliff. You weren't unconscious the whole time. My mind raced. What do you mean? You woke up. When? Late. And? She hesitated again. You were confused. That makes sense after a concussion. Yes. But you didn't recognize me. The sentence made my chest tighten. What? You kept asking where you were. That's normal. Yes, but then you said something strange. What? You thought it was years earlier. I stared at her. What are you saying? Her voice shook. You thought we were still in college. I tried to process that. That's not possible. Head injuries can do that. But how does that connect to Tyler? She took a slow breath. Because that night, you thought we were 19 again. The realization crept toward me slowly, painfully. And? You kissed me. I blinked. We were already married. Yes, she said softly. But in your mind, we weren't yet. The room went quiet. I could feel the weight of what she was about to say. That night, Megan whispered, was the night Tyler was conceived. I stared at her. That still doesn't explain the DNA test. Her eyes filled with tears. I know. So explain it. She shook her head. I've spent 17 years trying to understand it myself. My patience snapped. Megan, just tell me. She inhaled slowly. Then she said the one sentence that changed everything again. The doctor said severe concussions can sometimes affect reproductive cells. I frowned. What? They ran tests later. Tests for what? For genetic damage. Now I felt like I was listening to something impossible. And? Her voice cracked. They told us there was a chance. She struggled to say the words. That your sperm might not carry your DNA correctly. I stared at her. That makes no sense. It's extremely rare. Rare enough that I've never heard of it. Yes, she whispered. Which is why we never talked about it again. I felt the room closing in. You're telling me Tyler was conceived that night? Yes. But because of the concussion. She nodded slowly. His DNA didn't match mine. The silence between us felt endless. Finally, I asked the question that mattered most. You believed that explanation? Megan looked at me with exhausted honesty. I didn't know what to believe. Did the doctors confirm it? No. Then why keep it secret for 17 years? Her answer came immediately. Because you loved him. The words hit harder than anything else. You thought I'd leave? No. I thought you'd question everything. Her voice broke. And I didn't want Tyler to grow up feeling like a mistake. Upstairs, We heard Tyler walking across the hallway. His footsteps paused near the door. He had probably heard everything. For a moment, none of us moved. Then Tyler pushed the door open slowly. His face looked pale. "Dad?" I turned toward him. He looked between both of us. "So, what's the truth?" 17 years of secrets. 1 DNA test. And now a 17-year-old boy standing in the doorway waiting for an answer that could change his life forever. I looked at him. At the kid I had raised. The kid I had taught to ride a bike. The kid who called me Dad. And in that moment, the DNA test suddenly felt smaller than everything else. Because biology can explain a lot. But it doesn't explain love. And it definitely doesn't explain 17 years of being someone's father. Tyler waited for my answer. And finally, I said the only thing that mattered. DNA or not. My voice was steady now. "You're still my son." Sometimes the truth destroys a family. But sometimes, it just forces you to decide what family really means.